What's good? In today's video, we're just going to be going over module locations for every vehicle in the game. Starting off, we are going to be going over the XM19. For fuel tanks, when you're facing this vehicle, there is a fuel tank on the right side that is pretty easy to penetrate. If you're shooting this lower plate area, you're most likely going to be able to hit it and do some extra damage. You have the fuel tanks in the back as well, so these two ones are quite large, so shooting from the side, you're most likely going to hit the fuel tanks over the engine, and then from the rear, you're just going to want to shoot either down the center, or if they're facing behind you, you're just going to shoot that ammo rack. The ammo rack is quite a large ammo rack. It's this whole radial, so this whole radial right here is the ammo rack on this vehicle. It can be hit pretty easily from the side, the rear, and even from the front. So from the front, if you have a vehicle with long crit cones, you can hit these two little squares up top. These are a little bit easier to hit than the round area in the back, but both of them generally will result in an ammo crit. But if you realize your cone isn't long enough on your vehicle, like say you're using APHE, you're actually going to want to aim for these semicircle areas in the back instead. Some vehicles can hit like this top right corner and actually hit the ammo rack on this vehicle, but it's not super common, and generally you're just going to want to be aiming for this overhang part on the top of the vehicle. And again, frontally, just aim for the right side. If you're face hugging and you don't have the height, you can shoot down into the vehicle and hit the fuel tank here, like that. Or if you have enough height on your vehicle, you can just shoot this top area and be able to penetrate it for an easy ammo rack. I will say, if you do get the side of this vehicle, so like this, it's actually better to shoot this frontal fuel tank than the rear fuel tanks, just because these shieldings do kind of eat up a lot of the damage for those fuel crits. Next is the ALVT. So this vehicle has two fuel crits on the left and right side, so they're quite easy to hit when the vehicle is angled in any direction. But when the vehicle is facing you directly, it's extremely hard to penetrate this area unless you're in a high penetration vehicle like the Leo. And even then, sometimes you just won't be able to penetrate. But if it angles even ever so slightly, it becomes super easy to penetrate the sides and hit the fuel tank crits. So that's kind of where you're going to be aiming for frontally. I do know that sometimes you can hit this like top of the actual vehicle itself with certain vehicles and hit the ammo in the back, but it's really unlikely for it to happen. Usually that's for like APHE, as it has a wider cone and is able to hit it. Generally, the only vehicle is able to frontally crit is the M60A2, in which case you can actually shoot the front of the turret cheeks on the left or right side and hit the ammo crit in the back. Generally, you're going to want to be shooting for this side just because there isn't a crew to block your shot. So when you're shooting on this side, you actually have to aim past this little square cutout. Otherwise, you'll hit the crew instead. Engines and fuel tank crits, so it's quite easy to actually hit the engine. Just remember, for this vehicle, it doesn't come all the way to the rear, and it actually stops at this last sprocket in order to hit the engine or the fuel tanks. So this bump isn't exactly where you're going to be aiming for. You're going to want to aim kind of where the armor meets this bump, so right where the track is. In this general area is where you're going to be aiming to hit the engine or fuel tank crits in the back of the vehicle. When you're facing the rear of the vehicle, you're going to be aiming for the center of the ammo rack in the back to hit it, or the center of the vehicle to hit the engine. When shooting from the side on, the ammo rack does not extend all the way to the back, so generally you're just going to want to aim underneath this actual canister on top, and you should hit ammo crit on either side. Alright, for the M60A1 doesn't have any super easy to hit frontal crit spot. There is this one in the turret, but it's super deep in the turret, so it's actually really difficult to hit it with any normal AP or APHE. Some heat, like the M60A2 heat, can theoretically hit it, but it's really hard to do so, since you do have to be pretty spot on with this corner, otherwise you won't actually penetrate. So it's this corner right here in order to hit it with the M60A2 for the ammo rack. This vehicle doesn't really have any other frontal weak points, well, crit points, I should say. But the side of the vehicle is kind of full of them, so if you get anywhere in the behind or on the sides of this vehicle, the engine is actually quite large on this and it's very easy to hit. If you do get the side, you're actually going to want to aim between the 4th and the 5th wheels on the actual tracks itself, and just slightly above them will be the ammo crit on both sides. The ammo crit for the rear of the turret is on the opposite side of the cupola, which means for some vehicles, shooting the back of the vehicle's turret, like in this general area, you're less likely to actually hit the crit. But if you shoot it when its cupola is facing the opposite way from you, you're more likely to hit that ammo crit. Now, there are some unique scenarios. Again, M60A2 is able to go through this bottom hole and hit the ammo crit in the back, and even sometimes hit the engine crit in the back just because of how long this extends into the vehicle. So if you're playing a vehicle with a very long crit cone, such as the M60A2, you can just frontally crit it. And if you're playing any other vehicle and you're able to face hug this vehicle, you're going to want to aim kind of for this center port on the M60A1 when face hugging it, as you're likely to hit the ammo crit in the vehicle. And that's the only time this vehicle really has a frontal weak point, in the sense that you can hit the ammo crit when shooting down, but not every vehicle can do it, as it's about a 1 meter to 1.25 meter gap, and you do need a long crit cone. Not as long as the M60A2 per se, but generally it's still quite a long crit cone in order to hit that weak point. Now, for the M60A2, frontally, you're actually able to hit this ammo point in the vehicle. So if you have a high enough penetration gun, you can kind of go through the turret right on the right of the gun when you're shooting at it, and you should most of the time hit the ammo. It's not super deep in it, so it's about 1 meter in. But if your gun doesn't have long enough crit cone, and you find yourself being unable to reliably hit the ammo rack in the front of the vehicle when shooting this spot, you can actually shoot below the mantlet and hit the ammo crit. And because of the fact that this vehicle kind of slopes in, if you penetrate this area, you're a lot closer to the ammo rack on this vehicle, making it much easier to penetrate. I also want to mention, unfortunately, because of the way the ammo stacks here, it seems that it is very volumetric, and you will have instances where you won't do damage when you're aiming for this spot. So it is a good spot to know. However, I would say it's unreliable to consistently hit because of the way this volumetric kind of adds up. So for some reason, in some areas, there's like 300 millimeters of penetration that makes it really hard and wonky. So even like with 450, you can notice there's still red spots here that will just randomly auto ricochet. And they should be going in and actually dealing damage, but they just completely eat the shell and don't do any damage at all. Now, for the side, if you do get the side of the vehicle, you're going to kind of want to aim between the center of this bulbous point, as long as you get the right side of the vehicle, in order to hit the ammo rack. You can kind of hit it on the opposite side as well, but you have to aim above the center of the bulb. So this area where the bulb is, if you aim up here, kind of where the 20 millimeter cannon lies, you're actually able to hit the ammo rack on the opposite side. If you do get the side of the vehicle, between the third and the fourth road wheel, you're actually able to hit the ammo crit as long as you aim above the road wheels, so in this general area. Again, this, similar to the M60, it has a very large engine and fuel tanks in the back. It doesn't fully extend to the back of the vehicle, so just remember when you're shooting the back of the vehicle, aim a little bit more inwards to the hole, and you should be able to hit the engine or the fuel tank crits. Now, it is a bit odd in the back. If you want to hit the engine, you're going to hit specifically dead center. If you aim slightly to the left or right of where the engine is, sometimes the crit cones will be a bit funky and will neither crit the engine or the fuel tanks, so it's just easier to aim specifically dead center for the engine crit. Now, for the T62AV, this vehicle has two frontal weak points, the fuel tank and the ammo. If you're in a vehicle like the FV using AP that can hit two crits at once, if you shoot the fuel tank, you'll also hit the ammo, and by hitting the ammo, you'll get the ammo crit damage instead of just the fuel tank crit damage. If the vehicle is aiming like slightly to the side of you, or if you're able to hit the side of the vehicle, if you aim slightly to the front of the second road wheel, you're generally going to be able to easily hit the ammo. You kind of just want to aim slightly above the second road wheel, and that's kind of where the ammo is. If you're facing the opposite side, just because of how thin this vehicle is and how wide these crits are, you're actually able to shoot across and hit these ammo and fuel tanks as well. Just remember, when when the vehicle's kind of angling like this, you're going to want to shoot for the first road wheel to hit the ammo. And if it's angling like this, you're going to want to shoot for the third road wheel to hit the ammo. Or if it's completely facing the rear view, you can just hit the ammo bay in the back. Again, this is a very thin side profile for this ammo crit. It's actually much easier to hit the side ammo crit unless you're getting a flat flush rear of the ammo. Then it makes it a lot easier to hit. The engine and fuel crits are very large in the back of this vehicle. They fill up most of the armor space in the actual back. So these like side tracks and stuff don't actually count as armor or anything. So when you hit, you're hitting the actual engine bay or the fuel crits, and even with a very shallow crit cone, you're very easily able to penetrate it. And even if you have like high explosive, a lot of this engine bay area is only 60 millimeters, which means high explosive can super easily penetrate it as well. You can kind of see where the red is where high explosive generally won't end. Now, if you do have a vehicle with a very long crit cone as well, so ATGM heat and also M60A2 heat can frontally crit this vehicle's ammo by shooting to the right of the gun. It's a lot more consistent shooting to the right of the gun than the left of the gun. I'm not 100% sure. It just seems that you hit the crew most of the time and aren't able to hit the ammo in that sense. If the AP on the FE had a longer crit cone, you could hit the ammo through the crew member. But for that vehicle, it's not particularly a common shot, as you most likely will not actually hit the ammo by shooting through the turret, and it's just better to go through the fuel tank. Now, when this vehicle is facing you, normally you'll notice that you'll just want to shoot this lower left side of the bar. But if you are able to kind of face hug it, I recommend shooting this flat area, and that's where you'll hit the ammo on this vehicle. But if you don't have the height and gun depression, you can just shoot the where the armor starts to go into the flat area, and you'll hit the fuel tank regardless. Now, for the Object 287, this one's kind of wonky. Frontally, there's not really any way to hit the ammo crit just because of how deep in it is. You can technically hit it with the M60A2, but you don't really have the pen on the M60A2 to hit it unless you're kind of facing down into the vehicle, in which case the long cone of heat can hit this ammo bay and deal the crit damage. But generally, when you're on the side of this vehicle, the ammo crit is super easy. You essentially just want to aim slightly above the road wheels, kind of where you see where the bottom of the hole is. You just kind of shoot the bottom of the hole below the turret, and you're very easily able to hit the ammo rack. This is generally where you're going to be aiming for on this vehicle when you get the side, or even at like a slight off angle. If you just hit the center of this vehicle, you're going to hit the ammo crit on it. The engine crit and the fuel crit aren't super large on this vehicle. They don't fully extend to the rear of the vehicle, so as you can see, they don't fully extend. You're just going to want to shoot where the rockets end below them. So if you see this back part of the rocket, if you shoot below it, you'll hit the fuel tank or the engine crit. You just don't want to shoot where the rocket mounts and the rockets switch. Otherwise, you might not hit the fuel or engine crit. Or if you get the full rear of the vehicle, you just shoot the center kind of between these road wheels areas. You don't want to shoot left or right of the road wheel just because of how thin the engine is. So you can kind of see where the actual gearing is in this vehicle, and you shoot in between that and you'll hit the engine. Now, for the HSTVL, this one is quite easy for me. So for the ammo crit, you just got to remember it is below the gun height. So when you're shooting at it frontally, like when it's facing like this, you'll kind of aim for where the turret kind of starts to become sharper. And this ammo crit follows the turret around as the vehicle is driving. So as long as you aim where the turret, like the left side of the turret is, or below that, you'll have a very easy time actually penetrating and hitting the crit on this. You just have to remember that it's not high up. It's actually very low in the turret. Again, just remember, if you're shooting to the left and below the gun, you're more likely to hit the ammo than if you're shooting to the left and above the gun. For the frontal fuel crit, I will say this is like a very uncommon fuel crit for me to actually hit. It's too inconsistent for me to recommend it as like a fuel crit that you should be aiming for. just in general. And I would just actually recommend aiming for the rear of the vehicle if you get this chance. The engine goes almost to the very end of the vehicle, so it's very easy to hit the engine or the fuel tanks. Just remember, if you're shooting the rear of the vehicle, shoot the center, and don't try and aim for the fuel tanks. But if you are going specifically for the fuel tanks, just aim kind of where these brake lights are, kind of where your fuel tanks are on this vehicle. But other than that, you're just going to kind of aim for the left kind of angled part of the turret. I do know when the vehicle is kind of flying around, it can be hard to remember where it is. So remember, it's not stationary in the hole for this vehicle. It's based off of where the turret is going, and you shoot left of the gun and slightly below. If you are trying to hit this fuel tank crit, you can just remember that it's slightly above the second road wheel, and it might be easier for you to hit it there, but just remember, if you're going for this fuel tank crit, do not shoot above the tracks, as you will miss it. It should be mentioned that this fuel crit also extends all the way through the vehicle, so it can be hit on both sides, unlike the ammo rack, which can only be hit when you're shooting at the left side of the turret. If you get this side of the vehicle, so if you get the left side of the vehicle, or get around it, you're going to be aiming for essentially between the commander view and the gun, and on the low side of the turret still, kind of where this armor folds over. Essentially, between this antenna and this smoke launcher, you aim for this panel right here. And let me just kind of zoom in. So this panel right here on the edge, you're very easily going to be able to pen this and hit the ammo at least. Now, for the M55A1, honestly, this vehicle has a lot of crit zones. Specifically for ammo racks, right? It's kind of weird how many ammo racks this vehicle has. I think it has the most in the game right now, if I'm thinking properly. Like, even the Leo only technically has 2. So when you're facing this vehicle frontally, you're just gonna kind of shoot left of the right of the gun, kind of where this bulb is. So, and you'll kind of just hit the ammo rack. Just remember, shoot right of the gun, not directly right of the gun, but kind of where the armor starts to fold in on itself over here, and you'll hit the ammo rack most of the time. I actually don't recommend shooting for the whole ammo racks in most vehicles, just because of the actual depth that these ammo racks are in on the vehicle. They're actually quite deep in. A lot of vehicles in the game can hit this frontally, but if you're using APHE, you're not going to be able to hit the frontal ammo racks if you're shooting the vehicle from the front. If you do get the side of this vehicle, and most of the time you will, because it will be driving around you in a circle. So in this area right here is where the ammo rack is. And you can just remember this by looking at the second road wheel and just aiming slightly above the second road wheel. For the ammo turret crit, essentially just shoot for the third and fourth smoke launcher, and you'll hit the ammo crit most of the time. For the fuel and engine crits, problem with these crits in the back of the vehicle is they extend essentially half of the vehicle's length. And remember, this vehicle doesn't have it extend the engine all the way down, but an easy way to tell where the engine is just kind of look where this armor goes from flat to angled, and shoot in the flat area up till the turret. And again, you can just see the length of these fuel and engine crits. They're extremely large and extremely easy to hit. So these ammo crits may be a bit harder to hit when the vehicle is moving at full speed, but with half of the rear of the vehicle being in fuel and an engine crit, it's super easy to crit this vehicle out. So the XM1V, this vehicle has 2 ammo crits, or I guess one distinct one and one hard to hit one that you're almost never going to aim for. So when the vehicle is facing you frontally, if you have a high crit cone, so I've been able to hit this on the FV4030, the AMX-10C with ATGM heat, and the M60A2 with heat as well. Essentially, you're going to be aiming for the right side of the gunner port, and sometimes you'll hit the crew, but if you don't hit the crew and actually hit the side port of the ammo bay, you'll penetrate and deal an ammo crit. So this vehicle, the hole is the same pretty much for the normal XM190, in the sense that you have this fuel tank at the front right of the vehicle. Not generally somewhere where you're going to be aiming for unless you're in like a Leo, in which case you can quite easily hit that fuel crit. But in most vehicles, if it angles ever so slightly, it's a super easy shot to actually shoot between the shield and the hole. Kind of where these tracks are right here, you can actually see is a pretty easy shot to hit the fuel crit and do bonus damage. Again, it's one of the reasons why in most of the vehicles in this game, you just kind of don't want to angle, because not only is your side armor extremely weak even at a minimal angle, but you generally have a lot of fuel crits up front, or just crits in general up front on vehicles. The ammo bay down in the hole, you're kind of just never going to aim for it, just because it's covered by these two shields, and it's not super easy to consistently hit it when you have this giant ammo crit in the back of the vehicle. So one thing to mention with the ammo crit in the back is, since it doesn't fully extend, you just want to remember you're going to shoot before the actual turret starts to angle back in on itself. So there's this kind of imaginary line, and you're going to aim to the left of it, and you're most likely going to hit that ammo crit. Again, the ammo does actually fill out this like blast panel at the top pretty close 1-to-1, so if you are able to shoot down into this top vehicle, just aim for these bays and you'll hit the ammo crit. Again, same on this side. You're just, if you get a flat side, just shoot where the armor is still flat, and you'll hit the ammo crit. The engine on this vehicle is actually very, very long. It's not super wide, but if you get like an angle like this, you can hit the engine most of the time, just because it's not super deep in there. But if you get the side of the vehicle, you're actually going to kind of want to aim for where there isn't any shield, unless all the shields have been blasted off the vehicle. But you're going to kind of aim for this area of the vehicle on either side. So even like at this angle, you're going to kind of want to aim here, and you'll be able to hit the engine crit, especially if the vehicle is angling and stuff. Or if you get the rear of the vehicle, you just shoot the center. Fuel tank crits, and again, if you can hit the engine over the fuel tank crits, but if the fuel is all you can hit the fuel. If you are able to face hug this vehicle, just like the XM190, if you shoot down into the hole, you're able to hit this fuel crit as well. I also know if you are using AP on many vehicles, sometimes it's not super consistent shot, but if you're able to hit this kind of like corner of the cola, you're able to, with the crit cone, go past the crew and ignore the crew and hit the actual ammo bay in the back itself and do the crit damage. It's not a super consistent shot, but it can save you in a pinch. But in all honesty, it's easier to go for the guaranteed damage and just hit the actual port right here for the gunner than to aim for the cupola, just because this is an easy shot to hit, especially if the turret is moving left to right, while this one isn't as consistent. Now, for the M1E1, this vehicle has two fuel crits on the left and right side, similar to how the ALVT has it. Again, if the vehicle is angling, you're just going to kind of shoot for this corner and you'll hit the fuel crits. They're super easy to hit if it angles at all. If it's not angling, then your best luck is to just kind of shoot for this kind of weak point in the center. If you have a vehicle with a long enough cone, if you hit, kind of like on the XM1V, if you hit this weird cupola angle, there is a chance that you can hit the ammo in the back. However, I will say it is not super consistent, at least in my testing. I say I maybe hit the ammo crit maybe 1 out of 20 shots, and maybe it's just I'm not hitting the angle perfectly, and that's why I'm not hitting the ammo. But I would just say it's easier just to be consistent and go for the weaker armor below the gun if you're face hugging this vehicle or anything, or if you're close up to the vehicle. But again, if it angles, you just shoot kind of the tracks, and you'll be able to penetrate the fuel tank and do your crit damage to it. If you get the rear of the vehicle, same as most, just shoot the center. Left or right side, just generally not recommended because the fuel tanks are actually super deep in this. If you do get like a side angle of the vehicle and you're trying to hit the engine on this vehicle, if you kind of like at this angle, if you aim where the armor starts to angle upwards, you're more likely to hit the engine. Or if you get the side of the vehicle, you don't want to aim at the top of this engine bay, you're just going to kind of want to aim slightly below it. So there's this spot above the shield where you'll just kind of aim for, so that you can ignore the shields and ignore the reduction of damage. But if you're just making your life easier, just aim for this back shield right here if you get the side, and you'll hit either the fuel or the engine, depending on how you hit it. For the ammo crit, kind of like the XM1V, just don't aim for where the armor starts to kind of angle in on itself again. You just kind of want to shoot it where it's flat, and you'll hit the ammo crit. You also have the blast panel at the top that if you get like kind of an above angle, you can kind of like shoot at the blast panel since they're not super heavily armored, and you'll be able to do an ammo crit. Again, on the opposite side, you just kind of shoot the back of the turret. Just remember, not after this armor starts to angle inwards. So what can happen if you do shoot this section is, depending on the ammo type, you're like, if you hit it at this angle, right, per se, you hit this corner, your crit cone technically goes out of the vehicle and isn't able to hit the ammo crit. And when you do get the rear of the vehicle, the ammo doesn't actually go across the full back of the turret. So you're just going to want to aim center of the turret, kind of between the minigun and where this piece of armor just kind of sticks up. My baseline is shoot for this like pipe thing on the back of the vehicle, and you'll be able to hit the ammo rack. Let's talk about the FV4030. So this vehicle, just a few things about the armor profile on this vehicle. When the vehicle is driving at you, if you kind of shoot this under armor bit, I'm not sure where exactly it sticks. Yeah, see, you can see it sticks out on the bottom of the vehicle. So this red area is technically the lower end of the front plate, but there is like the fighting compartment in the back of the vehicle that actually juts out, and you can kind of see it at this angle. And that's kind of what you're going to be aiming for in a lot of your vehicles when this vehicle is coming at you frontally. But what that means is if you're using like APHE, if you shoot with the right side of this jettison point, specifically with high APHE, you'll hit this ammo crit in the back from the front of the vehicle. You can't do this with any other ammo type other than APHE. So on like the Object 287, you kind of shoot this point and you'll ammo crit it. Now, for other frontal kind of like weak points, there aren't any specific ones. Like, technically, if you get above the vehicle, you shoot this back right panel for the ammo crit. But when you're like face hugging this vehicle, sometimes you will get these like below the cheeks points that if you aim down into them, you'll hit the fuel tank crits. But if the vehicle is wiggling kind of like back and forth, it makes it a lot harder. Also, this is quite a tall vehicle, so unless you're also in another tall vehicle, kind of shooting down into these points isn't the easiest. But if you are able to face hug this vehicle and shoot down into the points, there's actually these fuel caps right here on both sides. Just aim for these as well. And they're not super easy to see, especially kind of with that kind of, with everything going on. But you can kind of see them at this angle, and that's kind of just where you'll aim for to hit those fuel crits. So for the side of this vehicle, the fuel runs along this top side. You can clearly see it here. So you actually can kind of, there's two, so this vehicle has two layering of shielding and ERA. So on the side of this vehicle, you will notice that sometimes you just don't do any damage. And that's because it has both ERA and shielding behind the ERA, which does mean that these fuel crits take a lot less damage. If possible, if you have to hit the shield, you aim for the back over here so that you can kind of break this first shield and then actually penetrate and damage this fuel tank here. So in a sense, you're still going to get a reduction on damage, but this shield breaks so much easier and doesn't have ERA on it that you're still doing more damage on this one than trying to aim for these side fuel crits. Not saying that it's impossible, it's just saying that it's more difficult to aim for the fuel crits where the ERA is located at on this vehicle. For the ammo, you kind of have this in the back part where the armor on the turret squares off. That's where you'll find the ammo at the top of this vehicle. If you're shooting at the rear of this vehicle, just remember the ammo is not below the cupola. It's to the left of the cupola, and you'll hit the ammo crit. If you're shooting from this side of the vehicle, remember it's behind the cupola, but not all the way at the end where the actual jamming equipment is, which kind of makes the shot hard at further ranges. It's not an impossible shot since it still is technically a wide hitbox, and it can still be hit from the side, just not super effectively. And sometimes you'll have like this ERA block the damage for it as well. For the engine, it's a pretty big engine. I would say just shoot in between the two fuel barrels in the back and you'll pretty much get the engine all the time. I do know if you like aim slightly to the left or right of the fuel tank or fuel barrels, you just won't crit. So just be aware of that situation as well. Now for the Leo. This one, most people in the game kind of know these ammo crit spots. I think this is the only other vehicle in the game with 3 ammo crits other than the M55A1. You have the very characteristic ammo crit at the front right of the vehicle. Super easy to hit. If you're using APHE, just remember to aim for the lower part. If you're using most other ammos, you just aim for the right side of it. Just aim for the right side of it and you'll hit that ammo crit. If the vehicle is only showing its turret, you can actually ammo crit it from the front by shooting below this viewport, or kind of where this viewport is. And you can kind of see it there, but you're going to want to shoot the bottom of the viewport and kind of where the shielding is covering, and you'll hit the ammo crit as well from the front. I don't think this one's a really hard shot either. If need be, you just blow off the shielding, and then you shoot there anyways, and you'll deal an ammo crit. If you get the rear of the vehicle, just shoot to the left of the back of the turret for the ammo crit as well. Just not the right side because you'll miss it. Side on, it's kind of hard to hit these ammo crits. It's actually just easier to try and shoot through the vehicle and hit this one because it's a little bit wider out. And these ones are super thin. Another issue with this vehicle that I have is just the whole back third of it is a crit as well. So you got fuel tanks running all the way up until about halfway through the engine. And then the engine kind of runs through the back as well. This engine kind of runs to the very end of the hole. Not at the very top side, but on the lower side it definitely does. Just remember, the engine isn't actually filling out the whole engine compartment, so you're not going to want to shoot the very top most of the time. You can, especially if you're shooting down into it and you'll hit the ammo crit. But generally, I would recommend just kind of shooting a little bit lower than the top of this engine bay. Essentially, think of it as where this armor starts to angle, there's an imaginary line. You just run across it, and that's the top of the engine and the fuel tank. When you get the rear of the vehicle, you just want to shoot dead center again. Fuel tanks are actually kind of deep in there, so not every vehicle can penetrate and hit the crit cones at the back of this vehicle. Just aim for the center for the easy to guarantee engine crit. Now, niche crits is, if you do get the side of the turret kind of like this, just shoot below the cupola, you'll hit the ammo crit. And if the turret is facing this way, shooting below the cupola on the hole itself will also give you the ammo crit. But these two ammo points actually move with the turret of the vehicle, but this one, is stationary. Now, for the AMX 10C. So, the AMX has kind of a wonky, structure for its fuel crits. So, they are at the top of the hole. So, if you blast off these shields, it's kind of at the top of the hole. And it kind of runs along, kind of like the FV. You kind of just think of it similarly to the FV. In that case, it does have a frontal crit point as well, but the difference between this frontal crit point and the Leo is just how deep in the vehicle it is. So if you notice, there's this huge area gap between it and where it is. I actually recommend, if you can, kind of shoot up into it because there's less of a distance that has to travel for you to hit that ammo crit. If you are able to face hug this vehicle, you just kind of want to shoot where this armor starts to angle upwards. So if you see right here, the armor starts to angle up right here, and this is kind of where you're going to aim for that ammo crit frontally. If you do have a long crit cone, so if you're running ATGM on this vehicle, or if you're using the heat on the M60A2, you shoot to the right of the gun, you're not going to get blocked by this shielding, and you're able to hit this back ammo crit as well. Weirdly enough, because of the nature of this vehicle, if you shoot HE into the side and are able to pen, because of the way that HE cones are, a lot of these fuel tanks can be consistently hit. Especially, so there's let's see if I can show it properly, but this vehicle has arches between each of the wheels itself, and those arches are kind of where these fuel crits sit. But if you do get the rear of the vehicle, again, shoot the center of the back. And if you get the rear of the turret, the ammo actually sits flush against this basket. So if you're shooting it, try not to aim for like this corner right here, or even this box on the right side. You're just going to want to aim for where the basket is. If you get the back side of the vehicle, the ammo doesn't actually go all the way to the back of the turret. And you're going to kind of want to aim to where this box is on the rear. So if the shielding is up still, you just aim for like this box overhang. And then if you're on this side of the vehicle, you just aim where this piece of armor kind of sticks out above. Now, for the M3E1, this is a vehicle where I only kind of ever aim for one crit point on this vehicle, and that's this ammo crit in the turret. One easy way to kind of spot this ammo crit is look where these grenade launchers are. So these two left grenade launchers on the vehicle is kind of where you're just going to aim to almost consistently always hit the ammo crit. Another way to see it is there's actually this line on the armor plating as well. You're going to shoot the lower half of the turret on the right of this armor plating kind of separation, and you'll hit the ammo crit. For the like whole ammo crits and stuff like that, because of this vehicle using ERA, I generally just don't aim for these. The engine crit, again, because of the ERA on the vehicle, I just don't aim for this. And it's in such a weird spot that like you generally, if you hit this point on the vehicle, you're generally shooting down into the vehicle, which means your cone is going to kind of extend downwards and miss this engine crit most of the time. The fuel crit, again, you got an ERA and a shield, so there's a shield layer, and then this ERA as well, so you can kind of see it here. So I generally don't recommend aiming for this if you can. If you get... So this ammo crit also kind of follows the turret around as well. If you get the side of the vehicle, you're going to kind of want to shoot kind of this attachment point on the actual like ATGM itself. On the bottom of the attachment point, you can kind of shoot here and hit the ammo crit. If you get the rear of the vehicle, just remember it's in line with the cupola for the most part. Kind of makes it easy to hit. For me at least, just aim to the right side of, well, I guess it's not a cupola, but it's the gunner sight. So just aim to the right side of the gunner sight and go down, and you'll hit the ammo crit. On the opposite side, so this, I will say, is the hardest way to hit the ammo crit on this vehicle, just because of the distance between and also the placement. I'm not super consistent with hitting it, but essentially these two ERA bricks, aim below them, kind of where the hole kind of comes at this off angle and kind of goes from one angle down to another. You'll just kind of aim below the bricks and shoot across. And as long as you don't hit the crew, you'll hit the ammo instead. In most vehicles, unless you're using like APHE, in which case you can't really hit the ammo crit from the rear or the right side of the vehicle. Now, for the last vehicle, we have the MARDER. So, the MARDER, if you are able to, unless you're using APHE, so the one caveat for hitting these frontal crits for the MARDER is if you're using APHE, in which case you actually have to shoot this angled portion, which most vehicles using APHE can't actually pen. So, for everything else, shooting AP, just shooting the left side kind of this flat plate where the 37 is, you're most likely going to hit this actual engine crit. And then if you're getting a side angle on the vehicle, if you shoot between the third and the fourth sprocket or the wheel, slightly above them, you'll hit these ammo crits, and these are present on both sides. And then if you get the side of the vehicle and you're going for the turret ammo crit, kind of shoot below where this like little gun is on the side, and you can hit the ammo crit kind of right in this area. If you get the rear of the vehicle and you're trying to hit an ammo crit, look at this curvature and aim for the right side of the curvature, and then kind of slightly below. So you can see where the neck of the vehicle kind of comes up. You'll shoot below the curvature, and it's pretty consistent to hit the ammo. And then if you are facing frontally, and this is the crit that I aim for most of the time when facing this vehicle, is you see this parallel line of grenades on the vehicle. Most of the time, if you shoot below those parallel lines where the viewport is, so when the vehicle is kind of facing you frontally, you kind of shoot here on the viewport, or even here on like the turret, you can pretty consistently hit this ammo crit as well. And this is, if you're using like APHE, this is also kind of where I recommend to shoot this vehicle as well, just for the ammo crit, because it's super consistent to actually hit it. I mean, not as consistent as the Bradley per se, but if you do get the side, I would say these ammo crits are much easier to trying to hit this one in the actual turret though. And this ammo crit does move with the turret as well. But other than that, that is every vehicle currently in the game and all of their module weak points, and kind of just where I generally aim for on these vehicles as well. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy the video, I do hope you subscribe and leave a like and comment down below what you would like to see me do in the future. Have a good one. Goodbye.